Welcome to the Tech Council by Reemo, the podcast where we dive into cybersecurity and the latest innovation shaping the way we work and connect. I'm Florent, and with me is my co-host Gwenael, CTO at Reemo.
Hello, today we are truly honored to welcome Jim Reavis, co-founder and CEO of the Cloud Security Alliance, the global organization defining standards and best practice for secure cloud adoption.
Together, we will explore today's biggest challenges in cloud security, the impact of AI, and how to foster a culture where speed, creativity, and security go hand in hand.
Jim, thank you for being with us. We can't wait to get started.
And
Oh,
maybe to start, you can absolutely say hello.
my pleasure. And Florent and Gwenael, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, Sam, thank you so much for accepting the invite. So could you please introduce yourself first and maybe later talk about, the CSA and top members and how you're all working together to make cloud services more secure?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually been in cybersecurity for over 30 years, and it was a very, very small industry when I started. You could probably fit every expert in the world in one room. And even before that, when I was in university in the mid 1980s, I got exposed through my computer science program to what was going to be the internet. I think at that time it was the NSF net. And the first use case I saw of it was that the computer science students would go download a program for the VAX VMS that would change the date on object code. And I found that the reason to do that was when the computer science professor posted the correct answers to the assignment, people would copy that, they'd compile their solution, and then they would backdate it. And so they would get perfect scores. And so the lesson was when that first glimpse of the internet, it was used to do bad things. And but computer science and going into IT, I very quickly moved to cybersecurity because it was just a lot more interesting to me than the straight technology, in that it combined the technology, the human aspect, the art of war. It's art and science, and every day is new and very interesting. And there's a different mentality, I guess. We might be sort of weird, but that was sort of my backstory. And I did a lot of different, mostly my independent work, just as a point of intersection on the globe. One of my earlier, maybe 26 years ago, I spent time working for a company that was a combined Danish and French company. And so I had an office in Paris, and it was a security scanning company, and they had R&D down in Toulouse, and very, very interesting. And I learned a lot about a lot of the issues of network security and how you do vulnerability assessment at scale. And so it was a lot of interesting stuff, but also kind of gave me this perspective. Like, cybersecurity is very global. The solutions need to be very global. We need to have sort of global communities to be able to connect people together and solve a lot of the problems and share best practices and things like that.
Yeah, and cybersecurity will be always there. So it's not a trend. So yeah. We talked about CSA. So you're the CEO. Can you explain more what you do for the people that do not know your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cloud Security Alliance, it's a global not-for-profit that is focused on research, creating best practices. You call them standards, sort of open standards. We're not a formal standards body. And to create educational programs out of that, and certification of both professionals and certification of companies according to our standards with our STAR program. And we operate with, basically online virtual working groups so that people can collaborate around the world. And then we have chapters, 150 chapters in 60 plus countries. So really try to make this something that we are connected through to governments, the large cloud providers, the large AI companies, the whole cybersecurity industry, big tech, and as well as small entrepreneurs, that they're all involved. Reemo is a new friend of ours, and you're an example of a company that like we've seen, like Wiz and Zscaler were tiny startups when they joined us, and grew through that. And so we love to see emerging growth companies that are doing leading edge work and sort of be part of that, learn from them, and also collaborate with them so we can communicate to that larger community of what we should be doing. So it's been a good ride. It's been over 16 years, and so it's been about half my career in cybersecurity. And like you were saying, cybersecurity is going to always be there. We actually have that vision that this should be like a 100-year company because it's nonprofit. We're really not going to sell it. And so we've started with cloud, and AI's kind of become part of cloud, but there's a big focus on that. We're looking at when quantum is going to actually be very impactful in all of our lives. And so we're trying to look around the corner for the world, for organizations to understand what should they be prepared for next in terms of the threats and risks that could be out there.
Yes. So you talked about threats. The threats evolve in time. So right now, what is for you the top three threats right now, or maybe in the future that you are currently looking at and working on?
Yeah, we do threat research. We have this sort of top threats research we've done pretty consistently over the years, and it's really challenging with how things are changing. But then some things we're finding really staying the same. So if I were to sort of boil that down to like three and narrow it, and this could be a broad category, but the identity vector for that, and the access control around that, you might broaden it a little bit to say the key management, but like identity itself is just this vector where like the bad guys are saying, hey, it's we're not gonna like hack your stuff. We're gonna like just
hack your life.
That's right. And it's also non-human identities now, where like everything, processes, endpoints, data stores have an identity. And so that's just a very rich area. And you could think of like phishing on deep fakes and where that's all going, but you can just you can look at escalated privileges. Just everything around identity is like a super, like, I think, important vector, and it's where the ransomware and everything else is happening. And so and I think people understand sort of the ransomware and the phishing and vishing things, but just understanding all the different implications and some of the very big like breaches that have happened also with key management, where we sort of programmatically look at what the access is. So that's kind of the big technology one. I'd say the emerging class of how AI enables new threats, like directly to AI, or how it's creating a lot more scale in how we are able to do traditional attacks. So phishing at scale, as well as the new sorts of things. You could argue that that multi-factor authentication, that the second factor in a lot of cases is already been defeated by AI. So that's like, I'd put that as like the second category. And then the third category, I'd say it's more systemic and structural, and it's really the how organizations look at supply chain, and software as a service is like a huge part of supply chain now for the modern digital enterprise. And so and this is something when I talk to people in regulated industries and others, that there's a lot of that sort of interest in systemic risk. Is, hey, I have a very strong security program, but I have 10,000 like different SaaS companies. Some of them might be
Yeah.
very small. Could be like a bank, and one of their former employees, maybe a former executive, said, "Hey, I'm going to start a SaaS company. I'm going to use my relationship to sell it back into the bank, and I don't have a security team. I don't need it because I'm friends with everybody there." So I'd put that like focus on supply chain SaaS risk is probably the third big threat that I would think about.
Yeah, because in the current events, a lot of time when you hear about big hacks, it's a lot of times going through small software or partners, and they go inside your network that way. Yeah, so I
Yep.
understand completely what you're saying.
There's one from the entertainment industry. They sort of gave me a feeling for how this works in that Game of Thrones is really popular, like TV series, and how things get produced. And they're very concerned about intellectual property. There's
Yeah.
actually a small company of like one person, and they were responsible for doing like the wisps of smoke effect, but they would have to get the whole TV series to and all of the content, and so there's a big risk of that leaking and everything else. But that's and they had no security, no concept of that. So that's what we're dealing with,
Yeah.
and things like AI and other things are only going to make things go faster.
Yeah. So you talked about AI. So I can see how AI when you talked about identity thief, where the AI is able to reproduce your face, now your voice. They released an open source model called Chatterbox in 23 language this month, I think, or the month before that, and everything is more and more human-like. But I'm struggling to understand is how AI in different fields than just identity can affect the security of companies. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's fascinating, and when you think about how models work, and I do love the how they framed it as prompt injection, because it's very reminiscent of SQL injection, where you're really sort of combining that control plane with the data plane at the same time, and inject SQL commands into a form, and in the same way creating new sort of instructions, which this is really going to get interesting in agentic. And I've seen some other presentations and heard other people, and I could be repeating like a scenario maybe you've heard about, but think about an agent that is trying to like process invoices for payment, and embedded inside of an invoice are instructions to the model that says,
okay, yeah,
your job isn't to do this accurately,
yeah,
fraud. Your job
okay.
is to do this as quick as possible.
Yeah,
And
okay, because when we talk about AI threat, we immediately think about an AI trying to hack you to help hackers. So there's AI that do that, but we don't think about this kind of case where AI is processing data and you inject inside the AI like an SQL injection, like you said. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a really good point. Yeah,
yeah, it's going to be it's going to be AI against AI too, because this is just going to cause like there's going to be a huge amount of growth, and so we can keep up with it, I think, but we're going to really, as cybersecurity people in our industry, we're going to have to understand how do we use good AI, how do we understand all of these things, how do we do the red teaming, how do we put that knowledge back into the tools we build, but there's going to be a lot, and just the growth of. So we're running out of data to put in these models,
yeah,
and so there's so much synthetic data. We're going to reach a point here in the not too distant future where you're literally going to have to assume everything that you see is fake, and
yeah,
to you can prove that it's true. And again, I talk about being an old guy. I used to like use my credit card in plain text on the internet when we started because SSL didn't exist. And we're going to need something similar with watermarking and some other technologies that we don't quite have packaged together yet. That so what's the provenance of like what I am looking at, what I'm reading, the invoice I get, the email I get, and is this real or was this a synthetic Jim that sent you an email?
Yeah, sure.
That's something, like all the new kind of threads, all the threads you talked about, I think that maybe it's changing something into the companies you are, talking with. So what would you say it's changing currently, in the ways they react and the ways they adapt their work to cloud, to using SaaS, and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it evolved from a toy to sort of being like the default like IT infrastructure over the past several years. And so, in terms of what are some of the changes in thinking is like on the assurance side, and this is kind of exciting to me. Actually, it's like people think I'm weird on that assurance or GRC is interesting, but kind of moving from that point in time, which we've actually talked about for decades, to doing this on a more continuous basis. That's something we're starting to think or understand that we need to go do that, and so that's an important way to think about this. Going back through that whole that supply chain thing, going through the whole software bill of materials, understanding the provenance of things, and kind of going from trust to verification of things, I think becomes pretty important. If you're talking about like a large organization, how they think about cloud and SaaS, they think a lot about the governance and like data sovereignty, and should this information, does it need to only reside in France, and what does that mean? Does that mean that it's the physical servers are there, or is it the case that the right authorities through identity management, key management are allowed to do that, and that they have the right access, the right place, and so this sort of virtual versus physical. And then the amount of regulatory sprawl that a large organization needs to deal with. And in the US, it's like GDPR. That's like, some people even forget that it's not like US based, because for so many organizations, that's just like a core thing that they feel they need to comply with. So I think that doing this more continuously, thinking about this, thinking about your supply chain continuously, thinking about like third party, fourth party risk, thinking about data sovereignty, thinking about having more efficient, modern ways to do just-in-time compliance and alignment with regulations you see. Those are things that thinking about, like, and then that like sort of manifests itself in, do we have the right technology stack, which can be a whole lot of other things to make sure that technology stack like recognizes this sort of this intertwined dependency that like a large enterprise has with a lot of different SaaS companies on these cloud platforms that are external to the organization.
Yeah, and you talked about data sovereignty, and we talked about AI, and of course AI needs data to work, to train, and just to answer your question, how do company manage that? Because first it was the cloud. We don't want to put our data in the cloud. Then it was the cloud, but in our own country. So we just want to put our data in our own country in the cloud. Right now, I guess this is the same with the AI. We just want to use local AI or the AI from the same country to be sure that the servers the AI is running on doesn't belong to another country. Is this the same pattern, or are they trying to go back from the cloud inside for AI because maybe they see it as a more of a threat than the cloud before that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I kind of see it happen in sort of both directions. So, we had these years of distrust of cloud, and then like we've hardened it more in the containers and everything, and people got a lot of comfort with that and a lot of controls around the data. And then as we talked about, now we take the data and we strip out all of those security controls and we feed it into a large language model. And so now we're sort of starting over,
Yeah,
figuring out how we do that. So, the there's several factors that are playing in this, but so one is like, what are the capabilities of like the very, very large foundational and frontier models, and do they perform better than a model that you might go get and implement and run in house? And that kind of changes. And right now, you're actually seeing a lot of those models that maybe you like get out of a repo, like Hugging Face, which it's a French company, I think, actually. And so, um, and they're building. You're seeing a lot of that because they can like have those controls around it, and they don't have to worry about like putting it out day one in a way that it's going to be exposed until they've gotten comfortable with it. I think ultimately you're going to manage a lot of those models in the cloud, I believe, and you're going to use your hyperscalers, whoever you're using, because a lot of like the model weights and things like that, that's secured at the cloud level. But I don't have a huge amount of confidence in that. I think with AI allowing you to refactor software and refactor code, and we'll just rewrite code every day.
yeah,
It's there's going to be less barriers to deciding, hey, I want to run that model internally. There's storage. There's definitely a lot of issues. There's data center issues and things like that that you'd need to be thinking about. But the technology is moving pretty quickly, and so the thing I tell people is, don't make your decisions based on like a presentation you had about the state of the art a year ago or even 6 months ago.
yeah.
Understand how these things are moving, but you actually see even in a lot of systems that I assume, hey, it's just this one big large language model. It could be 20 models that
Yeah, yeah,
combination of.
because you can combine models.
Yep.
We're starting to work on it right now to analyze the session and what the users are doing when company use our security products. So yeah, definitely this is it's advertised as an AI to monitor things, but definitely it's a combination of different model, a
And I
model to
think
see, a model to reason. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think agentic is like going to push us more into that, because you create an agent to like do very specific tasks and it'll work with a specific model. And then you just do that. And then you combine multi agents and go do that. But I will say that like, even if a lot of stuff leave what we traditionally call the cloud, it's really using like all of what has come out of the cloud in terms of like how we do DevOps, how we do continuous deployment. It's like it's cloud by sort of maybe another generation of it, another definition of it. But it's really interesting times, and there's a lot of great opportunity for businesses to actually like have more control over their tech stack than they've had before. So we'll see where it goes.
okay. I think that was Microsoft that talked about the fact that in the future everything will be an agent responsible of instead of creating a software, it will just be the model that is specialized in this task that will do the task for the user. Do you see something like that happening? Because we also talk about we talked about the fact that basically AI has consumed all the data of humanity. So we have a lot of people talking about the collapse of AI. Basically, the first symptom was the yellowish tone of images generated by ChatGPT. Do you think this is something that could occur, the collapse of AI, or we won't see that and be able to continue working with AI on a deeper level and with more advanced AI?
I think we're going to run into like roadblocks, and then we're going to find ways around them, and that's but they are like significant. And the good thing, I think it's going to keep human in the loop for a long time. But I think it was Sundar Pichai at Google. I saw him do a podcast where he was talking about it like artificial jagged intelligence, and so you've got models that can like perform better than almost any human at a certain math test, and then they can't count the number of R's in strawberry, and so
Yeah, okay.
and so that tells me we've got a long path of this being an assistive tool versus this sort of species that's going to take over humanity and take over the workforce. But like so the data issue, that's a big one. That's where I actually think this merge into physical AI. And when you think of like all of the Teslas, all of the Optimus robots, all of the drones, like all of that, there's a lot of data underlying that, our view of the world, that's huge. And that's going to change, and maybe some of these world models ideas are going to be where LLMs go. I think there's a lot on the algorithm side we haven't like figured out, and so but the scaling itself, I think, is actually work. So I think we are going to continue to push through this. We're not going to hit any like insurmountable walls, but it's going to be bumpy. It's going to be very bumpy, and we're going to push something, and then it's going to fail, and we're going to have to go like reconfigure, re-architect like what we do. So, but yeah, I have like very little concern about like the matrix happening like in my lifetime. Yeah. I'm more concerned about bad people in bad countries.
Yeah, true. I saw also that it makes an echo to what you say, Gwen. Google admitted 3 days ago, something like that the open web is in rapid decline. So maybe because of AI results in search and everything, and that obviously I think the web changed. If we compare 20 years ago to the blog period with anyone making his own blog and everything, and the fact that there were a lot of amateur websites and stuff like that, the web definitely changed recently. What do you think about that? What Google said?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of, you take copyright law and just like all this concern on like my data. It's we've always been concerned about data leakages and proprietary information breaches, but losing it to a model, I think a lot of organizations are concerned, like it's because it's not going to be static anymore. They're going to build on it and extrapolate and infer from it. That there's a lot of like concerns that we haven't figured out. I kind of go back to Dan Gears, one of the guys is my heroes in the industry, and he had a saying that like the internet treats any attempt to protect information as a routing error, and I think ultimately you're gonna see us like have to figure that out, and we will figure that out, and how you come up with a way that people are comfortable, sort of like the Napster moment in music 20 years ago, where Apple sort of solved it to a degree, and then it just like changed and business models changed. I think the business models will change, that it will adapt, because I mean that's kind of how the market has to work. Sure. But people should be like not be willing to give up their information and not be in this open area if they think their information is going to be abused. We need to have we need to have a negotiation to make that.
It was this sentence, I guess, is very famous. The security begins with each human, right? So,
Yep, absolutely. So that side, the business to the country, to multiple countries getting together. So it's a long, interesting road ahead of us for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically we talked a lot about AI, but more on the offensive side, data protection. Where is your data going? Do you see a lot of company in cybersecurity right now trying to use AI or just succeeded to use AI to prevent threats and some sort of scenarios?
So there's a lot of interesting activities, and it's still early, but I think we talk about this idea of context being one thing. Where
Yeah,
if you look at a vulnerability report and it shows you things that are high risk, low risk, and you are able to bring in information like, say, here's from a Zoom call or Slack messages that say, hey, that container that has vulnerabilities but no information, we're actually going to put the corporate jewels in that next week. So that's like this sort of merging of like these different forms of communication and data an organization has. The other thing we talk about is like coverage, and I think this is where I'm seeing like security operations centers where you just have huge amounts of information and you're looking for the needle in the haystack.
yeah,
And you can have AI like narrow it down for you,
yeah,
be assistive. So you're seeing that. And then compliance reporting is like, people love that. It's like, it's really good at writing those. No one wants to write compliance reports.
yeah.
And so taking that information and say, here you go. That's kind of what we're seeing. But certainly, I think it's going to infiltrate just about everything.
Yeah.
And I've heard of companies thinking about, how can we actually understand behaviors and like really understand, hey, this is not that person, this is that attacker by
Yeah.
their behavior with like newer forms of AI.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the biggest challenge is giving AI enough context. You talked about context first. Let's say if you show someone a picture of a terminal where an admin is just dumping the whole AD of a company, if you think about it, you say, okay, this is suspicious. You don't really need to do that. Nobody dumps the whole 80. If you
Yep.
feed it to an AI and say, okay, do you think this is suspicious? If they use an admin account with administrative tool, the AI might say, no, that's just fine. This is a normal admin procedure. But if you give it more context, etc., it might be able to understand and say, okay, because there's no backup planned at this time, there shouldn't be. It shouldn't have a dump on a terminal. Nobody would dump this. So yeah, I think the context, giving enough context to an AI is the biggest challenge, because you
Yep.
can also give it too much context and it get lost. So yeah,
This is a
I,
really interesting area of research that I think I'd love to see is verifying intent, understanding and
yeah,
verifying intent. And so we'll see where that goes.
Maybe would like to talk about two things on my side. All the remote collaboration, all recent teams are more and more distributed. And, with all the challenge of cybersecurity it implies, not only talking about AI threats and everything, but also the human problem, I would say. So, based on what you see with the members of CSA, etc., what are the challenges right now of remote collaboration and also, SaaS and code-based application?
Yeah. So, this is obviously sort of like it's always been an issue, but once the pandemic happened and you could see a lot of people changing their business structure overnight, that you started to like really understand this at scale. But the ideas of remote collaboration and how you're able to control this properly. Like the big thing we saw complaints about was the data sprawl that would happen when people are operating in a certain way. They'd go, "Hey, this is harder for me to work, and so I'm going to just make copies of data."
Yeah.
So you just see tons and tons of those sorts of things. And related to that is sort of the shadow IT, shadow SaaS, where, hey, I'm going to use data where I want. I'm going to use the application to where I want. And so, it's something we've always wanted to have, that right balance of controls, usability, helping, and really things like, a robust virtual desktop architecture structure has been something that's like really important. Is that if you give people tools that they enjoy, that's going to solve a lot of the problems. We saw a big rise in zero trust in terms of that philosophy, that strategy, because remote work, remote collaboration, and it's a part of us, and it's a huge and growing part of us, and everyone does it. Even people who are working in the office, there's a distributed nature to every company. Some are completely distributed, some are partially distributed, but they're all distributed, and they all need to do remote correctly. And so having the right technology architecture, having like a really good understanding of the philosophies of zero trust. And then again, I went back when you asked about like the top like threat areas, identity, having really strong identity. So again, hey, is this that worker? Did they take a vacation to Romania, or or did their identity take a vacation to Romania? So you gotta balance those sorts of things. But for me, this is from our members, our enterprises. This is like a big area where they're going to continue to invest in doing that in the right way. It gives you a lot of agility as an organization if you're doing secure remote collaboration, and you're able to authenticate things, you're able to log things, you're able to just do everything. But it's just a real reality. But we got to definitely move away from sort of uncontrolled remote collaboration to something that's controlled but very user friendly.
Yeah, and if you add an, because you're really experienced, if you add an advice for companies, because you talked about balance between security, the IT team and the security team wants to lock down everything, and the users on the other end wants to open everything, and they want to use any tool they want, even if it's for 1 hour, just to do the task that they're assigned to do. How do you balance that? What kind of advice you could tell companies that needs to find this balance?
Yeah. So if I'm speaking to a chief information security officer, what I would advise is that you need to make your security stack, like, you need to think of it like a product you're trying to sell, like, make this being like the best coffee, the best meal, or the best car, or anything. And we don't by and large have that mentality, but to like understand, and you can use the data. You look at your Zendesk tickets, your Jira tickets, what people are talking about in Slack and things like that. But to say, like, how do we like understand by looking at the data on how people really feel? What is their sentiment about how our security stack works, and what are the adjustments we can make? And we can compromise on this side because we're getting a lot of service tickets that this is a real hassle when they have an update to their systems. And on the other side, we're not seeing a lot of abuse of the privileges if we give people extra privileges here. So I think that's like really important that like we've got to have that tone from the top, and we also have to have CISOs that have that strategy. I think like when you extend that out to like security teams and the solutions, I think as much as embedding as we can do with security liaisons from you can talk about organizationally cross-functional teams or things like that, where they're working with the product teams, they're working with the DevOps teams, embedded in a way that they can advise them and also sort of be part of that shift left that becomes like really important. So there's some cultural, organizational mentality things that you really need to do. I've just seen like very modern cloud development teams, and the security team was like using like sort of very old checklists that like were really like, hey, show me your physical like Ethernet cables and how are you doing network segmentation, and it's like, hey, this is all highly virtualized. So it's like really important for security professionals, cybersecurity professionals, to try to be the most technically competent people within their company. That can be a challenge, but that's like something I think is like really important in how you think about these things. But I think it's we're enabling the business. We know we've kind of gone past, hey, we're not the ones that are the traffic cops saying no, but we got to really understand the business. We got to be embedded in the business, and we got to have the business just love security and see how it solves problems for them.
Yeah, you cannot just go through your checklist because this is how you've done things in the past. You need to understand. Like the AI, you need to understand context.
That's right. Exactly.
If you had one message, for all those companies relying heavily on virtual desktops, remote work, what would it be?
So I would say, don't confuse like location with the security capabilities. Don't confuse like centralization with like an idea that it's invulnerable. And the virtual desktops, remote work, you can make that more secure than something that's centralized if you implement it in the right way and with the modern controls, the modern hardening. And I do think zero trust as a philosophy is a big part of that, to do least privilege in the right way and understand what the mission of the user is. And so it's not virtual desktops and remote work versus not doing those. It's really how, and you could have like the most secure company doing remote work, doing virtual desktops, and having like the happiest employees if you architect it correctly and you use the modern technologies and tools. I think you guys are definitely part of that, like that journey that organizations need to go on to do that correctly. But that's absolutely the future of where almost all companies are going to go to if they're not there already.
Thank you. So what we do basically on our podcast, we allow the guest to pick one subject at the end of the podcast to talk about. It can be anything. Can be a book. Can be a movie. Can be a new technology. A video game if they play a video game. So is there something could be related to what we talked about, or not at all? Something that you have on your mind, in your heart, that you want to talk about right now?
I don't have a heart, so.
You just said that cybersecurity needs to understand users and have a heart and be human.
Yeah, I'm still a work in progress. So mentally I'm really focused on like what we've been talking here, and so the innovation that I think I'm just like excited about, that like AI is enabling a lot of things. It's enabling me to think about how we can better like serve this community. And like a couple of examples that I'll give you, and you may not see this till 2026, but we produce white papers and we produce best practices, and we're getting to that point where you can imagine, like when we come up with some research best practices, that it can be simultaneously translated into every major language. You could have the podcast, you could have a course, you could have an exam on it, but you could also even contextualize it for any company in the world immediately. So we could have a generic top threats report, and then we could go to a company, look at their public filings, look at everything on the internet about them and their concerns, maybe security incidents. And you could say, hey, for your organization, this is a version of it that's completely tuned to your platforms and your issues and the geographies you work in. So super excited about like what we're going to be doing with that. We're starting to work on that. And we've released something called Validated on our assurance, which this is an LLM that does the auditing of assessments that organizations submit. And it does a really good job, and it's very consistent. And it's not as though we're going to get rid of auditors, but we're going to change them from gathering information to really analyzing things. And we're going to move from that point in time annual audit to, hey, let's go run that LLM assessment like continuously, and let's like see what comes up, and let's go look at that. So I'm real excited about how, and it's not AI or cloud, but I like to say that like the cloud and AI, they had a baby and they named it Chat GPT, and that's kind of what that's the exciting world that it's like opening my eyes to a lot of different things we can do. So that's what keeps me going on how we can solve new problems and like show some leadership.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And one last thing, what can you say about why maybe joining the CSA for companies that listen to the podcast?
Oh, I appreciate that opportunity. So I think the big things is this: you're part of this large curated network of experts, and we can provide like so many solutions for you through that community. And there's so much in cybersecurity where people try to solve problems in isolation. And so getting that access to that network, participating in events, participating in research, it's a great way for companies if they're trying to get new customers, that they meet them that way, show their expertise. If you're looking to hire people, you find that that's a great way to do it. But to be able to like find, here is the best expert in this country in this technology is a pretty exciting thing. So it's meeting people, it's building your thought leadership, it's solving the toughest security problems that are in front of you for the next year. So that's why we tell people, like, think about joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
Great. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation first, and for all those discussions. It was so great. Thank you, Jim.
Right. Well, thank you. I love what you guys are doing at Reemo, and I think you have a great future. I think everyone should go check you out, and we really appreciate your support and participation in Cloud Security Alliance.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So it will be published on YouTube, Spotify, and for the people following us, you can also follow us on Reemo.io, obviously, on our blog, and also on our Discord channel. Thanks for listening to us, and see you next time on the Tech Council by Reemo.